I think this notion of international rules is very comfortable for some people to use when it suits them, but they don't believe in international rules when it doesn't suit them, because they don't apply international rules or law equally in all circumstances. So you can't say, because Ukraine has been invaded, that suddenly sovereignty is important, but it was never important for Palestine.
Hello everybody, welcome once again to AfriPost. I believe wherever you're watching us from, you're doing great. Now South Africa has already started prosecuting Israel at the International Court of Justice for the atrocities that were committed by Israel on Palestinians in Gaza. And this is something that has really brought tension between these two countries. You know, South Africa and Israel have not really been seeing eye to eye over the question of hostility that Israel has been targeting towards Palestinians. Remember, Israel has really exerted its force over Palestinians in Gaza. In fact, it is like apartheid that is going on. And South Africa has also had its fair share of experience of occupying force working against the majority. And this is something that South Africa is not happy about. And that is why they decided to really take Israel to court to really answer to the criminal activities that it is committing over people in Gaza. In fact, the health minister in Gaza has already reported that close to 24,000 deaths have been registered in the country. And therefore, it is very, very sad that these kind of atrocities continue to go on without any serious call to order. But I want us to look at one thing here. There is this Minister of Foreign Affairs in South Africa, NALEDI PANDOR, who has always been very vocal about South Africa's stand when it comes to the war between Israel and Palestine. The issue here is South Africa has always taken the road that there is no party that can benefit from war, and therefore there is need for these two parties to come down, sit, and really sort out the differences that are there. But one thing that South Africa has always taken over is that it will not side with Israel just because the Western powers are siding with Israel. It will look at Israel as an independent party and address the atrocities that are committed based on the merits of how they are being undertaken. I want us to listen to this speech where NALEDI PANDOR said that there is an injustice that is going on in the continent and in the world. And one thing that happens is that most Western countries do not want to abide by international laws when it does not suit them. But when it suits them, they really are very fast to go and call names and invoke laws that they do not even understand how to implement. Listen to what NALEDI PANDOR says, and then let's react to it after the video. Kindly watch.
And you had said in one of a speech that you gave asking for more resources for South Africa's diplomacy in this time, you said transformation of the global system of governance must move from based on power to one based on rules. And we all talk about a rule-based international system, and we need to adhere to a rule-based international system. But truthfully, in state relations, power and rules guide these decisions. So how does South Africa leverage its participation in many forums, the G20, the G7, the BRICS, the African Union, SADC, to try to have influence on the establishment of what the new rules of the game will be and how the power dynamics will come out in favor of the African continent, not just South Africa, having more say, more influence on those very things that you just talked about?
Well, I think it can't just be South Africa. It has to be South Africa along with SADC, for example, or South Africa with the entire African Union, all of us in the G20. What we've been able to do in the G20 and as an invited participant in the G7 is to place Africa on the agenda of those formations. So it's important that South Africa is there, but it must always realize it's there on behalf of Africa and not on behalf of South Africa only. So that's very, very important. Second, I think this notion of international rules is very comfortable for some people to use when it suits them, but they don't believe in international rules when it doesn't suit them, because they don't apply international rules or law equally in all circumstances. So you can't say, because Ukraine has been invaded, that suddenly sovereignty is important, but it was never important for Palestine. It's very peculiar. If you believe in international law truly, then wherever sovereignty is infringed, it must apply. And this is the point we've been making, that we use the framework of international law unequally, depending on who is affected. And we are arguing that that must change. And one of the interesting changes that has occurred is the sudden movement, because Russia has invaded Ukraine, that we say, okay, let's not allow the Security Council to just have the veto and let it pass. We take it to the General Assembly. When some of us had been calling for the General Assembly to have a greater say, we never enjoyed support. But suddenly today, see, that's where international law begins to mean nothing. Because for some, we see it as a cheating, and for others, we see it as a benefit. So our argument is, let's revise the international multilateral system to ensure that we observe that post-1948 has arrived. Well, I think relationships take place in different categories and between different sectors. So for me, what is really important is to ensure that the business-to-business relationship is strong, because that is the biggest contributor to the kind of development we wish to achieve.
Yes.
As to whether I should make a Secretary of State happy or like me, that's less important than the trade issues. That's my approach.
Yes.
And I do think there is a distinction between the support we enjoyed from Cuba during the struggle against apartheid, compared to a support that was given to UNITA by America, for example, UNITA which murdered our cadres. So there are reasons for the perspectives that exist, and one should never, I think, try to pretend that there aren't histories.
Sure.
So, you know, Russia, as Russia, the Soviet Union, was prepared to provide support to the liberation movements, when many governments were working very closely with the apartheid state and even murdering our leaders. So we can't suddenly, you know, forget that history and behave in a different way. But I think we've been fairly clear in our view that war doesn't assist anyone, and that we believe the inhumane actions we have seen against the people of Ukraine can't be defended by anybody, and we've not defended them, nor have we been neutral about it. We've been clear. But what we have said is that a lot of the public statements that are made by leading politicians are not assisting in ameliorating the situation, because the first prize must be to achieve peace. We've got to have a cessation of hostilities, and name-calling of one or the other, being very robust and vocal, doesn't assist us in achieving at a cessation of hostilities. This is why we've said we have to make greater effort at diplomacy, greater effort at drawing the parties together. We even proposed something that was done with us when we were fighting apartheid. Many leaders said, let us put together an eminent persons group of leading personalities who enjoy global respect, who will draw the liberation movements to a table, draw the apartheid leaders to a table, and support them in negotiating an outcome that leads to democracy. This was done with us. We've said we've totally marginalized the United Nations. The Secretary General is not playing the role that he should. And we've said, let us have this notion of an eminent persons group, find a group of eminent persons, former presidents or whatever, who enjoy world respect and who'd be able to have Mr. Putin and Mr. Zelensky around a table and say to them, let's sit down and negotiate a settlement here. Sure.
Now, after listening to NALEDI Panda, for me, it is really open that South Africa has taken a stand. And in fact, it is the only country in Africa that has really taken this issue of war between Israel and Palestine very seriously. I think it is because of the history that South Africa has had. The apartheid regime meted a lot of atrocities against black South Africans. And in fact, South Africans who are black were considered to be lesser human beings. And therefore, among other African countries, South Africa can easily relate with what Palestinians are going through in Gaza. And that is why, from the beginning, they were against the bombing of houses, indiscriminate bombing of houses, hospitals, and different facilities in Gaza. They called for a way through which these two warring parties can come together and understand the best strategy through which peace can exist in this part of the continent. You will understand that Israel and Palestine have really had a long war and a long fight that has really not gotten any solution. In fact, there are people right now who are proposing that Palestinians should be brought to Africa. So I really don't understand the motive behind this war, because I don't know whether Netanyahu has the backup plan, because if you look at it, it is just increasing tensions in the Middle East region. Right now, Iran and the United States are already thinking of engaging in war. You also understand that Yemen and Israel and even United States are also having their war there. So it is like this issue has really sparked tension in the Middle East region. And this is not good for peace within the world. NALEDI Panda says that Western leaders have really understood the art of doublespeak, because they will speak about war crimes and invasion when Ukraine is invaded by Russia. But when Israel invades Gaza, it is a right of defense. And I believe that this is totally wrong. It should not be that way. I think that one thing that should happen is that let this law apply equally to all people, because as we understand, everybody, all people are equal before the law. And if these laws have been created to really give us a situation whereby we can live amicably with our neighbors, then they should be applied without any fear or favor. And in fact, there should not be anybody who is superior to the law and somebody who is junior to the law. And therefore, I believe that in this case, United States and its parties that are supporting Israel must really put into their hand, and they must understand the kind of sufferings that children and women in Gaza are going through. On this, I really support what NALEDI Panda is saying. They cannot just go and disrespect the law that has been there and really appear like they're siding with the aggressor, in this case Israel. Israel has really shown that it is not having any plans to respect the human rights that are there for people in Gaza. Children are being killed, hospitals are being bombed, and with different explanations and alibis coming from all sides of quarters. I don't know what you think about this, but for me, I believe that NALEDI Panda has really come out to really defend South Africa and really show that there is need for people to respect and subject themselves under the law. Thank you for watching this video. Please, if you have not subscribed, consider subscribing to our channel, like this video, and also share. Thank you, and may the good Lord bless you. Goodbye.